Hi, and welcome to Seat Meets Table, the podcast that brings people together. I am your host, Sam O'Hara Childs, and in the seat today is Issac Money. À table. Hi Isaac, how you doing today?
Yeah, good Sam, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks man, good to see you.
Yeah, and you? Yeah.
I'd like to begin by asking you, at what age did you encounter Christ?
Thank you, yeah, that's a big question, and it's a bit tricky to kind of pin down an exact age. So I grew up in a Christian household, so my family, my parents are Christian, and throughout growing up, they taught me the Bible, they prayed for me, they brought me along to church. My dad, for most of his working career, was a vicar, so he's now a military chaplain. So,
right, okay.
Yeah. So he's basically the same, but in the military.
Sure.
Has to keep fit and all that stuff. So, so I think maybe when I was a teenager, that's when I got baptized.
Right.
When I was 13, I think. So that's probably the date that I put down. But I think since then, there have been moments where I've encountered Jesus all the more. I think I've gotten to know him better, gotten to know his love for me better.
Right.
So yeah, other key moments might be at university. So when I left home for the first time when I was 18, the world's your oyster at that point. You can kind of do what you want. Not to say that you can't be a Christian at home, but that's where the rubber hits the road. And so it did hit the road, and I kept on going. So,
right,
yeah.
So it was baked in to your childhood from the beginning, but you personally felt more of a deep connection upon being baptized, I should say.
Yeah. I think because there's preparation before baptism, so you kind of meet up. So so I'm a youth worker now, but back then my youth worker he met up with a few of us, and we all met together and basically saw, what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to say I'm all in for Jesus? And so that was the course of a few weeks, and after that I was like, yeah, I'm in. Yeah. Right.
Why is religion good for a community?
So obviously, well, when I'm going to be mentioning Jesus quite a lot, hence,
of course.
But he came along 2,000 years ago into this world, and actually he was very controversial because at the time he challenged the religious leaders. So those in the temple courts of his religion. He said, actually, this, what you practice as religion, the sacrifices you make, the laws you keep, religiously reading the Torah or reading whatever your scriptures are, those in themselves, they're not. They can. What's a good way of putting it? They can twist what religion should be, or what faith should be. So you can see how a church might work in a community, and there might be a positive outcome. Like people might be more involved with community events, charitable causes, providing safe spaces for people to come to and talk to.
Sure.
I'm not saying those are bad in any way, but the sense of, I'm going to turn up on a Sunday morning, I'm going to say my prayers, I'm going to read the Bible, and then I'm going to do it again the next Sunday. That's that sense of religion, that kind of regular routine of it. That's not. I'd argue that's not faith. That's not,
because it's too perfunctory.
Yeah, it's
superficial.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of what Jesus was.
Sure.
I think that's what Jesus was highlighting from these kind of these religious leaders, that they would do that, but then actually, what was the motivation behind it? It was so that they would be impressive.
So kind of like virtue signaling in a way.
Yeah.
Prior era, but same kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think when there is a genuine motivation of of love, of why you do it, why you do these things religiously, that can be really beneficial for a community. It can unite a community. It can bring them together around something.
Sure.
So yeah.
Sure. Well, following on from that, why do you think it's important that cycles of generations are involved in the church?
Yes. Yeah, I want again, I'd wonder what you think of the stereotypical church. I feel like in my mind, you might think of a village church with an older generation, perhaps the wiser, maybe. But as you said, there are loads of different ages and stages and types of people at church, and it's so important because the church isn't just for older generations. It's not just for those who like the traditional readings and prayers. It's a place where people can gather all together, that they can learn together, that they can grow together, and so that's obviously my role as a youth worker. That's why I'm involved with teaching the Bible to young people.
Sure.
Not exclusively, but that's a big part of my role. And I'd say one kind of metaphor that the Bible uses for the church, for the gathering of God's people, is a body. Right. So a body, it's made up of many different parts: hands, fingers, toes, or eyes. Now, in 1 Corinthians 13, it talks about how it would be ridiculous if the hand said, "I'm not a foot, therefore I can't be useful to the body," or the other parts saying, I'm not this, therefore I can't be useful to the body. But actually, if the whole body were an eye, not a lot's going to be happening with that body, is it? You won't have the brain to process things. You won't have the head motion to actually look around and use the eyes and so on. And similarly, the church is made up of all kinds of ages and stages and I guess cycles, so that it can serve the purposes of being Jesus' representation on the earth and in their communities.
I mean, is part of it that wisdom perhaps percolates down from older generations, while simultaneously younger generations revive the energy around the place and perhaps bring new ideas? Is that part of the benefit, maybe?
Yeah, I think so too. We don't want to say that the church is only just for young people. We want people who have gone through life experience.
Yeah, they have that wisdom.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to know what they've learnt, what they've experienced, and I meet up with some older Christians from the church who are retired, and that seems like might look like a bit of a weird thing. People often like to stick to their demographics, and maybe not.
I suppose often,
but I think it does go against that norm maybe to meet up with different people who you wouldn't come across any other time. Like if we didn't meet up at church, this guy that I meet up with, we wouldn't cross over in life, I don't think.
And that's something about that is the benefits and wonders, joys of connections you might not otherwise have. Yeah. With people you wouldn't normally meet, or a different life experience can give you different perspective, different wisdom. Yeah. You wouldn't get it otherwise.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. It's and so if I need to ask someone advice, I can think, who at church do I know who's been through something like that? Who at church has wisdom on this?
That's part of it too, is niches or specialisms of wisdom or perspective or experience, or it could be a prior career or something like that, whereas they will know to give you a perspective on this particular situation. Yeah, definitely.
And as you said, the young people bring the energy. Like for instance, it's like we've got quite a thriving youth group. We've got quite a thriving student group as well. People at the university who come along. Like recently, we've just been seeing them coming through the doors, and it's great. Like awesome, welcome,
excellent.
In. So and being able to hear what is going on, what is the current
taking the temperature of the youth.
I think so. Yeah.
Sure.
And even just young adults as well, like early 20s and all that. Like get them get their perspectives.
Sure. But also they are the future of the faith on this earth, aren't they? Yeah. So it's important that they are engaged.
Yeah, big time. I mean, there are a few times in the Old Testament where it says, God's people, they didn't tell the generation to come, and because of that, they lived their own way, and it all got very messy. The Old Testament basically is God's people who are blessed by God, but then they countless times they turn away from God, and the thing that helped them is hearing about what had happened in the previous generation, pointing back to how God saved them. The classic story of Moses and the Red Sea, Moses leading the people, God's people, out from slavery. That's something that in the Bible is always pointed back to. Like, look at what your God is like. Look at what He's done for you.
Sure.
Remember that is your God, and that's why we teach the Bible at church. It's an old. You could say it's like it's ancient. It doesn't. You could say, oh, it's not relevant today. But what we do see from it is God. God has done this for His people. These things, ultimately pointing back to Jesus and what He's done for Christians. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, talking of the youth, young people.
Yeah.
What are your duties at the church?
So I've been in this role for just over a year. Before that, I was a secondary school teacher. So I have experience of working with young people. That is my main focus. Like looking to see how we can look after, care for the young people in our care. Often, children of families who already go to church.
Sure.
So we have weekly groups. We have a weekly Friday night youth group. We have a couple of groups on a Sunday, kind of in the morning and then in the evening. So that's kind of church family where I kind of work with them. Throughout the week, there are quite a few schools that we go into as well. We so me and my colleague Matt, we do a lot of work together, and so we might go into primary schools to do assemblies, or collective worship. So like a 10-minute talk, that kind of thing, an engaging talk from the Bible.
And these are the kids who are just random kids. So it's just a kind of short seminar, lecture, workshop on a particular theme or idea?
Yeah, it changes from term to term. So we might have a series, what we're looking at. So like last term, for instance, at this primary school, we were looking at a part in John's Gospel or John's account of Jesus' life.
Right.
Where he was teaching about what it means to have life to the full. And so there are quite a few parables, quite a few stories that Jesus uses to explain what life to the full means. And so part of our role was to in preparation, we'll read the passage, we'll pray, we'll ask for God's help in understanding the passage, and then we will be going forward and preparing. How long you do it for? Like 5-10 minutes, kind of a talk,
right?
Usually with illustrations, just to kind of show like what is Jesus teaching here. Like we're not changing His words or changing what was said back then, but we're making it accessible for these pupils. So like they'll all be there with all the teachers and so on, and we'll just kind of stand up at the front in the hall and teach that.
Sure. So it's outreach, I guess you class that as, for schools in the community and helping the kids who already attend the church.
Yeah.
Right.
And also like that, and my role particularly, like I might run a Christian union in a secondary school, so that's less kind of widespread. That's more kind of 10 to 20 might come at a lunchtime.
Right.
And
these are kids who who are Christian, I suppose.
I think it's a mixture.
Curious? Or?
I think it's a mixture. So, a fair few from church who go to those schools will come.
Yeah.
But often they just invite their friends, like, come along, hear what Christianity's about.
Sure.
And that's an opportunity for them to ask questions and I guess just see what it means.
They might be curious
to be.
They might have heard things that aren't true, or just might be curious anyway as to what is it actually. What is the truth of it beyond what people might say? Yeah.
It gives them a forum to ask their questions themselves, and
sure,
be able to be comfortable and free to do that in a safe environment. So, and then there are usually other weekly meetings with the staff team and kind of prayer meetings and a fair few evening events as well, because naturally a lot of people are at work or at school, so working around that and running things then.
Yeah. Is it physical stuff as well? Activities?
Yeah, activities. Yeah, our Friday night, we have a lot of different games. We're very, I guess, blessed to have a hall with many different rooms and stuff that you can use for different games. Sometimes, so when we do like a particular outreach event, we don't really have too much of a Bible talk. We might have a 5-minute thought from the Bible, but then we'll have a night based on the theme of games like games based on a theme. And so we did video games last month. So I got out all the classics like Tetris and Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario, and I thought of games that we could do in real life to
sounds fun
to kind of do that, and that's a really fun part of the job, like being able to be creative,
dynamic,
it's fun.
Sure, sounds fun.
Yeah. It can be physical and like shifting things and trying to think how that might work and
or running very fast if you're Sonic.
Exactly, yeah. You had to be very fast. You had to get all the golden rings. So yeah,
nice. Which values do you think are most important to instill in children?
Like there are loads of things you could probably say. I think if I had to boil it down, it's going to be the value of love. So, and that can kind of branch out into a load of different ways.
Sure.
There's this idea. I've brought my Bible around, if that's all right. Just if I can quote the Bible. Because I wish I knew more of the Bible off by heart, but I.
You mean you want to illustrate your point?
Yeah. I want to explain kind of how the Bible views love.
Right.
So in the process of instilling or teaching or encouraging, where it's not just moralistic. It's not just going to values for the sake of values. There's a reason behind the value that we teach or why we teach it. So for instance, love in a letter called 1 John in the Bible, chapter 4. So it says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God." And then a little bit later on, it says, we want to have this love. Like, okay, what is this love? That's from God. And then it says, verse 10, "This is love, not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins." And so we're not saying, okay, youth, this is what we're teaching you. We're talking about loving and loving each other and kind of doing this. That is an outflow of it. But what we're ultimately teaching is God's love for us. That is the motivation. That is the key thing. We can't love God and love others without knowing how much God has loved us. Which, obviously, if you're not a Christian, you can say, "I love so and so, so surely I can love." Or you'd argue, doesn't this show that I love someone? I'm not a Christian, but I love them by doing this and doing that. But I think what this is saying is, God Himself is love, and because of that, you can't separate the two. It's not like God is loving. God is love Himself, and so
it's beyond values almost. Then,
yeah, I think so.
Like kind of a central divine driver almost.
Yeah,
that's the divine aspect of it, or the transcendent aspect of it. It's like the intangible golden light power of love / God. Well, so the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So love, it goes beyond what, like Valentine's Day and like hearts and
gestures.
Yeah, it goes beyond that. Another part, it just talks about really briefly. You can be able to speak tongues, or you can have faith that moves mountains, or you can have great knowledge and wisdom. But if you don't have love, then they're nothing. So the ultimate thing, I guess, which I think encapsulates all the other values that you'd want to encourage. I think love is at the center of it. Not that we need to generate love for others and love for God, but God loved us first through sending His Son Jesus to be a sacrifice for us, to basically to make it that we can have a relationship with Him.
Sure. So that's the main thing you try and impart to children, and everything else can come from that. But that's the core,
I think so,
pillar of it almost.
Yeah,
How do you get that?
God's love for us, I think, is which leads to love for others, and it leads to all those other things. I think.
Okay, interesting. How important is fitness to you, and is it about being a good vessel of God? We've already talked about the body.
Yeah.
Something in that.
Yeah, I quite. We met at the gym, so I do like to go. I don't do anything particularly impressive, but it's fun. Like it's good. It's good to have routine. It's good to have a way of living and doing things and having interests. And I do trust that the body that I've been given is a gift from God, as we all have blessings from God. That the way that we've been made and so on. I'll the Bible it talks a guy called Paul, who's a very he wrote most of the New Testament of the Bible. He's sending a letter, and he talks a little bit about how physical training is of some worth, is of some merit. It is a good thing. So the Bible says it's good.
Is it about keeping the physical vessel in good condition as a not as a reward, as a thank you to God for blessing you with the body in the first place? Is it incumbent on you to keep it in good shape and in good condition? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with any time we receive gifts, any time you've received a gift, what's the best thing you can do with that?
Got to honour the gift.
Yeah,
Right.
and honour the gift giver, because
sure,
someone gives you a gift. You just like throw that gift on the floor, like that's not taking it seriously. It's not receiving the gift. It's putting it back to the gift giver.
Well, also with the idea of love, if they've given you a gift from a place of love and you reject it, you're stopping the path of love, aren't you?
Yeah.
Which, if not a sin, is surely then it's definitely a transgression.
Yeah. It's we don't want to
ingratitude, basically.
Yeah, there is gratitude in it. There is being thankful that, and so but you can take it to the level beyond that. So we receive good things, but do they become like God things? Is another question. So, for instance, if I like going to the gym a bit, but it's not my.
You don't fixate on it?
No, I don't. Thankfully, I mean, there are times where I probably do, and I probably do put my physical. Being able to lift weights and all that, I put that above God, which you prioritize that, or I guess you can think of what do you think about in your mind, or when you're daydreaming and what you're doing. Is it about your relationship with God, or is it about, I'm going to go for a PB next week, how am I going to get there?
Sure.
And
can it become about vanity, perhaps, or stuff like that?
I think so. Yeah. But I think that's with anything. I think
sure.
Being musical. I mean, I'm not musical. I'm very, very bad at music and all that, but being musical, being arty, being really good with, I don't know, with a camera or whatever it is,
maths or something like that.
It could be, yeah. It could be, like academic achievement, whatever it is. Those things, they're good things that have been given to us by God, but we can make them take the place of God. Yeah,
I understand.
We can invest all of our effort into that.
Yeah, as an end unto itself. When it should be that God, in fact, is the focus.
Yeah.
I see.
So, think things like you'd say, like alcohol, or things like, I don't know, like food, like all of these things, they have their right context and their right use.
Or they can be abused.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, so similarly with physical fitness, with the body, it's good to take care of what God's given us and
So
be thankful for it.
Yeah.
But focusing on the gift giver.
What makes a good Christian?
That is that's a great question.
That's kind of it almost has no answer because it's infinitely sprawling. But
yes,
carry on.
Yeah, I guess in all of these cases, I'm trying to answer as best as I can.
Sure. Yeah.
I think a good Christian is someone who knows that they're not good on their own. I think it's someone who acknowledges. I mentioned about sin earlier. That is a great need that we as humans have, and that the Bible tells us that we have, in a sense of we have this problem of a sin, and we need something to deal with it or someone to deal with it.
Right.
So when we go to church, and there are loads of different things that happen at church. One of those things is to confess, and that we're not talking the way that our church does it. It's not like you're in a room and it's all kind of like dark and all that stuff. It's like we're all together. We all there's like a prayer up on the screen that we read together. We take time to think, okay, this week, what ways have I not lived in the way that I should? And in those moments we're saying, oh, I can't do this on my own. I've messed up.
Right.
And in that moment of need, in that moment of want, that is when we can be amazed by the kindness of God, because actually in that moment we can trust that God has taken that sin away. He has dealt with it when that sin was dealt with on the cross onto Jesus.
Right.
Now, then, like throughout time as a Christian, I guess what happens, how you can be a good Christian, is knowing your need for Jesus, and then asking that He would work in you by His Spirit to make make you more like how you were meant to be.
Okay. So honesty, you're talking about in a way? Honesty with yourself?
Yeah. Being honest with yourself. Being willing to ask the tricky questions of yourself, like, why am I doing that? What are my motivations behind that? The answer that I reckon many would say is being a good Christian is or like you get to the pearly gates and then you're asked, oh, how have you done? What's going on? You'd be like, well, I've gone to church every week. I've read my Bible every day. I've prayed. I've given to charity. Those are all good things, but in and of themselves, they don't make a Christian. They make someone who's trying to earn their way into heaven. But fundamentally, being a Christian is saying there is nothing that I can do to get my way into heaven. The only thing I can do is be a gift receiver. Receive that gift.
So honesty then is a massive part of it. You think?
Yeah.
You believe?
Yeah.
About your own frailties and shortcomings.
Yeah.
And as you said, the need for God and Jesus.
Yeah.
And also putting yourself, I guess, in a position of supplication, worship to Jesus and God.
Yeah, like obviously the way we get to know Jesus is through the Bible. The way you can hear, we say that this is God's word. It's God's spoken word to us. It's not just any old book, and that's the way that we hear of our need for God. But we can also come to know how God fulfills that need, how He has done that. The temptation for that would be then to say, I'm just going to put my feet up and relax until I die because Jesus has taken everything, so it doesn't really matter how I live.
Right.
But that's kind of like falling off the horse on the other side.
Yeah.
So
that's too relaxed about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
And so, it's Jesus does call His followers, people who trust in Him, to take up their cross and to follow Him. Other parts of the Bible say that once you are in the kingdom, once you are, you've accepted that gift from Jesus, we're called to be living sacrifices. So not a sacrifice that is killed on an altar or whatever, to be a living sacrifice in our lives now.
Yeah.
That is pleasing to God. It's pleasing that we do these different things. But those things aren't what save us. It is that need, being needy.
Do you believe in the power of service, being of service? Being of service,
yes. So I guess what you mean by that is just being able to serve people and kind of that's a powerful thing. It's a strong thing.
Yeah, okay. And through that serving God, I suppose.
Yeah. No, definitely. At church, there are many ways in which people do serve and give their time, and which I'm very thankful for. That my youth group, obviously there are many teenagers that go, but we need leaders to be able to look after them. It's not just me. It's not like a classroom environment. It's kind of they're involved. So many of those do give their time sacrificially. We're going away on a camp reunion. So we do like summer camps, and this reunion happens every year, and it's in London. And so we're going to be traveling late Friday night, and sleeping in a church overnight in London, and then going to the reunion, and then traveling back on the Saturday evening, probably getting back maybe midnight, maybe 1 a.m. or so.
Right.
Obviously I guess that's my job, so I'm content doing that. But then there are people that give up their time to do that, which is awesome. So I do think it's a powerful thing. I'll come back to it. I guess the reason we do that is because Jesus is the one who has served us so well first. He's known as the servant king.
All right.
So how like a kingdom, you'll have like the king up there, and then slowly go down to like the I don't know, the peasant, I guess, in olden times. But Jesus came to flip that, to switch that around. He's the one who has gone to the very bottom, so that he could lift us up. He could serve us.
Right.
And so that pattern, in Philippians chapter 2, he or a guy called Paul, or that guy I mentioned before. So he says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in his spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being in one spirit and one mind. So this is talking about what Christians are called to be like. But then a little bit further on it says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, so Jesus is God, he didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So that idea of service, it comes from Jesus, and if you picture Jesus as God, and he comes down to be a human like you and me, but not only that, he came to be a human in poverty. He's known for not having somewhere to lay his head, he not having a home, and all of those things. And then he goes even further to death on a cross, the probably one of the most brutal ways to be killed.
Sure.
So that he could serve us. So that's ultimately the power of service, which then is worked out in and amongst Christians and people at church.
So again, honour the gift that Jesus gave to you and reciprocate in kind, or live by his example.
Yeah.
And humble yourself to the nature of service.
Yeah. As a way of, as you said, responding to what is already true, what Jesus has already done for us, then we can live that out and show Jesus to people. Yeah.
Have you witnessed a miracle?
I guess it depends on, again, how you define a miracle.
Define it how you like.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If we're talking about supernatural, things that you can't make sense of, maybe like healings or things like that. I haven't seen those things. There are things that are unexplainable that do happen, which I guess everyone experiences probably day to day. Kind of what we would say are coincidences and things that you're like, oh, okay, that was cool that I bumped into so and so, or so and so sent me a message just when I was thinking of them, or everyone experiences those to some degree. It's just what do you define them as? Do you define them as chance and luck and all that, or do you see them as ordained by God as kind of put there?
Sure. Well, it can be extreme good fortune, that kind of thing, or a sudden change of fate or direction. Could be someone ill who experiences a reprieve from the condition. Any of that kind of thing, or not?
Not really. No. I guess when you see God giving people strength in tough situations, I think is a real testament to God's power in that person.
That's almost miraculous, surely.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It may not be what people would first think of as a miracle, but yeah, I mean, obviously Jesus, he did many miracles when he was on this earth, and feeding 5,000 with two loaves of bread and 5 fish, or it might be the other way around, I don't know, but or raising a guy called Lazarus from the dead, or walking on water, all the classics.
Yeah, I mean, those are overt.
Yeah.
There are plenty of times, say, in my life where, talking of where do people find the strength, for you it'd be they find it in God. But for me, there have been times when things have been very difficult and I've somehow found the strength to continue.
Yeah.
And I thought, where does that come from? And it feels miraculous because it's...
Yeah.
The chances are against it so extraordinarily that I would find the constitution and willpower to persevere. But I do.
Yeah.
So that in a sense, even though it's quite inner and it can be very personal, it feels miraculous.
Yeah.
Because it's unexplainable.
Yeah. And so I guess what would you say those things are, those moments? Like where does it come from? Do you just...
Well, my parents are Buddhists.
Yes.
And I, similar to you, but different to you, I was baked into it from birth because it was all around me. I didn't choose to practice it, but I feel infused with it.
Yeah, okay.
And I generally believe, we mentioned higher powers earlier on. I generally have faith in myself and the universe and me being in harmony with it. So when very powerful positive things happen, I credit them to myself and the universe working as it should do.
Yeah, okay.
Effectively. Universal energies with which I feel in harmony.
Yeah.
That's how I frame it for myself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But mainly it's on me. I just think, I was always meant to get through this.
Yeah.
I have the strength, therefore I can do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reserved a new locker of it I didn't know was there because it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
And now it is.
Yeah.
It delivers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fair.
Yeah. Does that?
That
makes sense.
That does. Yeah. And,
sure.
And as you said, like there are, that sense of inner strength, that kind of where it comes from, what it is. It
feels miraculous.
Yeah. I guess because in another context, you might not be able to deal with that, but
no,
there might be things that come together all at once and circumstances that change, which mean you can do that. You might have a friend that comes into your life that is able to identify with what's going on with you, or your situation. They may have been through it themselves, or there just might be this deep sense of, I don't know what it is, like internal.
Well, it's fortitude, but also sometimes it's clarity and revelations. It could be deciding on a career choice.
Yeah.
It could be a creative idea where maybe it occurs to me and I think, that is flaming genius. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I have there's a writer I like, Terry Pratchett, and he calls them nodes of inspiration that float through the universe and land in certain people's heads.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Again, that's going back to the idea of the universe, but it's still a thing of where does that come from? It's baffling.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When do you feel the most euphoria or joy in your faith?
Yeah, I think I find, it is a tricky one, because what is joy? Well, there's so many things that you can define and be like, oh, what is that?
Sure.
I feel incredibly happy when I see God at work in my life.
Right.
So, and that can take many different ways. I think it can be when I've heard a passage of scripture opened, and God has spoken to me through that, through a preacher, or through my own time reading the Bible. I'm like, oh, that's cool. God has shown that to me. He's spoken to me. It could be when seeing other people have that experience, or they are either encouraged to do one thing, or they feel convicted about another thing, but they're like, oh, okay, that's tricky. But I'm glad God has shown that to me. Things where answered prayer, that kind of thing. I've said we have prayer meetings at church, and we pray for things, and different things happening, like different things that might seem like problems at first are getting in the way, and there's prayer for it, and then those things, the situations change, and we see, oh, God has answered that prayer. He's moved it that way,
right?
Or I guess this doesn't make me necessarily feel the kind of joy, like the happy, smiley kind of joy, but if those things that they don't change in the exact way, so the idea of a door opening or a door closing, if a door remains closed, there is a joy in knowing that God knows that that's the right thing.
Okay.
He has answered that by sometimes saying no,
right?
Which we can trust if we do think that God is all powerful, but also working His purposes in our lives now. We can trust that, even though it might be tricky, and we might be like, oh, God, what is happening? Why are you doing this? We can trust that He's doing His purposes. He's working His purposes.
So there's security in the knowledge that there is a plan.
Yeah.
And then there's acceptance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that I don't always get to that acceptance straight away.
No,
like we're humans. Yeah. So yeah, that's. But I guess then it's what you define joy as. I mean, euphoria. I don't know necessarily if I have particular moments like that as such, but joy is something that is, I guess, deep seated within me. You can have joy in persecutions and sufferings and trials. You can still have that joy. That doesn't mean you're going to be smiling all the time. But it means that you've got something to hold on to. You'd be like, even in these moments, I can rejoice. That it might ultimately come down to the gospel truths of, this sucks right now, but I know that Jesus is just, that He died for me, that I have eternal life, beyond the grave, all of those things, and in those moments I'm rejoicing. I can have joy.
Sure. Why do you think God calls particular people to be priests?
Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier about the whole the metaphor of the body. So just a reminder. So this body, it's the head is Christ. So that right. that is the top. That is the head. That is kind of, I guess, running everything and so on. But all the other parts of the body, they are the church. They are the people.
Right.
And so again, this idea of there are different gifts that people have, and different things that people are good at, which mean that they are able to serve in a particular way within the church community. Again, if everyone was, I said it earlier, that everyone is an eye, then there's no use in that.
Sure.
So if everyone was a priest or a vicar or whatever, or an elder, however you would name a church leader, that's not going to work. There's then there'll be too many people trying to take take the lead in different ways. And
too many cooks spoiling the broth.
Yeah, exactly. Likewise, often church leaders, they are preachers. So if someone is preaching, if everyone's a preacher, then how's that going to work? Kind of everyone's preaching at the same time. There's got to be a sense of listening to one particular person, or at least a small handful of people who might be on a rota to preach and who work hard at that kind of thing. Where some people might be good as church leaders, some people might be really good at serving the church or being a Christian in the secular world, or working a job that isn't church based. So, being able to be part of their communities, being able to get alongside people who don't know anything about Jesus, but then they are able to hear about Jesus through these people working their 9-to-5 jobs or whatever they do. That was something I particularly enjoyed as being a teacher. When before being a youth worker, I liked getting to know people and just getting alongside them, and if people ask me about Jesus, I'll tell them. I'm not going to force anything. Oh, well, apart from when I was an RS teacher and I had to speak about Jesus. So, but yeah. So there are times for people to have particular roles in the church. There are different ways people can serve. And I think Christians probably disagree on what it means to be called to a particular role. So, is it an audible voice that tells you should be a church leader, or is it using the wisdom that God gives, seeing what doors open, seeing what Christians around you say, like, you're pretty good at teaching the Bible, or you're pretty good at pastorally looking after this person. Have you considered church leadership or a role like that?
But that's still a guiding hand at work, isn't it?
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah. So in a sense, people would be like, oh, okay, I think maybe I'm called to ministry. I think I'm called to this role.
But is it based? It must be based to a degree on the skills they already have. Good at talking.
Yeah.
Maybe good at interpreting the Bible, as in to be called to be a priest.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, those are important things to be able to do. I think so for interpreting the Bible, in a sense, everyone is called who's Christian to be able to interpret or read the Bible or hear God speak to them.
Sure.
But you're right. Not everyone is given the gift to be able to stand up in front of however many people and teach what a passage says.
Or to do it in a new way. Wouldn't there be a new conviction or a new revelation or some new spin that makes it more accessible or more potent somehow? Yeah.
Some people are just naturally very good at speaking, are very good at presenting things, and that's not everything that a church leader does.
Sure.
It's been really interesting actually being part of the staff team and at the church, and just seeing the genuine pastoral care that people have for others in the church, and being like, so and so's having a tough time. I'll call them. I'll catch up with them. I'll do that. It's a lot of unseen stuff. So yes, they'll be doing a lot of stuff up at the front during a Sunday service. But there are so many things that are happening behind the scenes that you've got to have a deep
love for people then. Or going back to the love idea, it must be there in full force for you to be a church leader.
Yeah. And even if it goes against your natural, if you're an introvert, extrovert, I would say personally I'm quite introverted, but it doesn't stop me from being able to talk to people and to get alongside them and show something of Jesus. And I think quite a few church leaders would say that they are introverted, or that that's not their natural thing to do, to be up at the front, showy kind of.
So why do it? Because you feel called to it?
Yeah, I think so. Like you're called to it. You see that there is a need. I think that was ultimately why I became a youth worker myself.
Right.
I was quite enjoying being a teacher, but then my church had this role open, and I was like, I'll push on this door. If it opens, then I'll go for it. I think I'll trust that that's what you want me to do, God. And there were people that interviewed for it, and if God wanted me to stay in teaching at that moment, then very easily that door could have stayed closed, but it opened. So yeah.
So it can be mysterious sometimes.
It can
as
be,
to
yeah.
Why.
Yeah. It can be. It might not be explained in this life now, but hopefully, in the future, I'll find out.
Well, talking of the future, perhaps the next life.
Yeah.
For my last question, if you could meet any three people in heaven, who would they be?
That is a great question. So yeah, I've been thinking a little bit about this. I mean, you're probably not going to be surprised by the first answer, which is Jesus. So he's obviously the main man, the big cheese, the King of Kings. So we're told that in the Bible, in Revelation, right at the end of the Bible, that we're going to be able to see him face to face. We're going to see Jesus face to face. Oh, nice.
1-to-1?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it works necessarily. Okay, right. But I imagine there will be a sense of, I will have it says he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes. So that sounds pretty kind of 1-to-1. Yeah. Sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing Jesus. There are loads of people that could be there. I mean,
could be historical figures, could be people from your family.
Well, that was going to be one of them. So my mum actually, so she died 3.5 years ago.
Sorry to hear it.
It's one of those moments where it's sad. But because I know where she is currently, I know she has a genuine faith in Jesus, and I'm thankful that it was goodbye, but it's not goodbye forever.
Sure, that's consoling, most definitely.
It definitely is. But obviously, when she did die, it was a very sad time. Like I was,
of course, yeah,
very sad, my family, but that's something that keeps, is a real comfort. So I'm very, very thankful, sure. and looking forward to seeing my mum again. There are many people from history. I don't know, like there's a guy called Bonhoeffer who did some things for the faith. There's a guy called John Calvin. There's a guy called. I mean, this is going more than three. I guess there's a guy called Paul, who I mentioned before, who wrote the New Testament, and it should be interesting to see what he's like, because he writes with real authority and conviction. But a few times in the letters, he says he's not very good at speaking. He's not a very great speaker or authority, mostly because it means it's not through his convincing words that people come to know Jesus, but it's through Jesus speaking through him, through the message of the gospel. But he wrote a lot of stuff, and he's very, some things are well worded, and I kind of want to see how you said that, like, do you mean this? Do you mean that? Or so it should be interesting to know what was going on when he wrote those letters. Sure.
Well, he wrote a vast amount.
Big amount.
A significant contribution.
Yeah.
And it's mainly him, right?
Yeah, in the New Testament. So I can't remember the exact details, but you've got so that's New Testament, and that's Old Testament. So and you got the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then most of the letters after that to the different churches are written by Paul, a few by other people. But yeah, so he wrote a lot, and obviously his words have been taken across thousands of years. And
so to go back to the source would be fascinating.
Yeah. Particularly because those letters are written in response to other letters, or you see there's a discourse, but we only get his end in many ways. We have to kind of think what's happening in that church, particularly that he's writing to.
Right.
So it'd be good to know
resolve some mysteries, maybe.
Yeah, the exact context behind what he was saying.
Sure.
I think those would be the people I'd want to meet.
Great. Well, thank you, Isaac. Good to talk to you.
And you, Sam. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, rate, comment, share, all that good business. And stay tuned for more fantastic interviews with brilliant guests. There's a seat waiting for you.